And welcome into Pressbox Live. I'm Stan the Fan Charles of Pressbox and PressBoxOnline.com. With me is my co-host, as always, the old left-hander. I can say that. And he won 20 games. How many times, Ross? Once or twice?
Just once. Just once. I got 18 here in Baltimore one year, so that was my first year where I spoiled them, and then I went backwards from there.
That is Ross Grimsley, who's just detailing that. And a little bit of a real good friend. He's now been a friend for about 6 years. I met him through Adam Gladstone. He's the creator, the originator of Big League Chew. And Rob Nelson is our guest. And guys, welcome to meeting each of you. I'm introducing two good friends.
It's a pleasure.
Pleasure, yes, sir.
Now, Rob, you were a left-handed pitcher as well, weren't you?
Yes, I didn't win 20 games. I won one game in 3 years as a Portland Maverick. So my brother Harry said I pitched briefly and ineffectively for 3 years. So who knows how that happens? The owner liked me. I was lucky.
Great.
All right. Hey, we've talked about this for years. We'll get into talking about it because every time I have you on anything, I like to tout this story because it's such a fantastic story about how you started Big League Chew. But let's start with the Portland Mavericks. You got there sort of when you realized your baseball playing career wasn't really taking off, correct? You had been in the minor leagues?
Well, I didn't know that until my second day in the tryouts. The first day I struck out 5 guys in 3 innings. And I thought, this is going to be it. My intention, because I had 2 great seasons in South Africa, pitching in Cape Town, was Player of the Year 1 year, was on the mound when we won the national championship in 75 in April. And in June of 75, I went to Portland thinking that I'm a late bloomer. I was going to be the Warren Spahn of my generation and was going to win 10 or 12 games in a short season. And the Yankees would buy my contract from this independent team. As it turned out, after the first tryout, my first appearance in the tryouts, we had 200-300 guys there from all over the world trying to be a Portland Maverick. I couldn't get anybody out. I got hit like a piñata. And the owner of the team was a great guy, Bing Russell. He was the former deputy sheriff on the Bonanza TV show. And quite quickly it was obvious.
He's the father of Kirk Russell, the actor.
That's correct. Kurt was on the team for one season, and just a wonderful guy.
Yeah.
But Bing had said, Rob, your future's not 60 feet 6 inches from home plate, and so there it was. I started a kids baseball camp, a little Maverick baseball school. I was on the team. I ended up being the pitching coach. I ran the tryouts. I did everything I could to be a part of something that was really spectacular. The documentary, The Battered Bastards of Baseball, still on Netflix, is just a great slice of Americana, Portland, Oregon in the 70s when we were just becoming weird. And I was at right time, right place. It was my 3rd season there. I hadn't even won a game yet when the inspiration came for Big League Chew. So go figure.
So let's start there. Now you're in the bullpen though, and you've had this idea percolating, and you come out, sit in the bullpen, and you're talking to one of your teammates, which was who?
Well, the former Yankee Jim Bouton, probably more the late great Jim Bouton.
Yeah.
Really great friend. And we were sitting in the bully. He was trying to make a comeback to the big leagues, as were we all. He was one of the few guys who did it. He got to pitch eventually with Atlanta. But he was just an absolute great guy, playing single A ball, living on a dream like the rest of us. But he was 10 or 15 years older than everybody else. And we're sitting in the bullpen watching guys spitting and chewing and laughing and chomping on Red Man and dribbling and making an absolute mess when Jim asked me if I had ever chewed tobacco. And I said for about 30 seconds. And it just never made sense. And he said, same thing with him. He said, Rob, less than a minute. I think he said he was in the Midwest League maybe, but he said it never made sense. And it was an idea, the bubblegum version of the thing came to me. The season before, there was a bat boy, Todd Field, who became a writer-director in Hollywood, who used to pack slices of licorice in an old pouch of Red Man that he picked up on the floor from the clubhouse. And the first time I saw this, I said, Todd, what are you doing? He said, I said, you're 14 years old. He says, relax, Nelly. It's, it's licorice. And we kicked the idea around a little bit. And The following season, I had said to Todd, I said, that licorice idea, I don't think that's going to fly because you eat it. I said, how about bubble gum? I think bubble gum would really work. And he said, yeah, it might. But, he was a teenager. We didn't give it much thought.
Right.
It was only when Boughton and I were in the bullpen when I said to Jim, what would you think if we shredded gum and we'd look as good as these guys, but not make ourselves ill? And Boughton's eyes got as big as baseballs. I mean, he was a good pitcher and the bulldog and tenacious. But as a businessman, he was even more tenacious. Yep. The first thing he said to me, and I'll never forget, he said, Rob, I could sell that idea. He said that before he said it's a great idea. He was just the bottom line kind of guy. And we were the perfect odd couple. I was the goofy left-hander with no baseball background except one good year at Cornell before I hit the road. And Jim was established. He'd written ball 4. He was in an all-star game. He pitched in the World Series. We were just a great couple.
He won 20 games one year and then came back either the next year or the year after and won 18. He was a top pitcher for the Yankees there.
That's right. He was with those Yankee teams where Ellie Howard was behind the plate and Whitey Ford and just a handful of guys. In fact, when they got swept by the Dodgers in the '63 World Series, Whitey lost to Sandy Koufax 3-2, and Jim goes out and loses to Don Drysdale 1-0. Jim always said, had I pitched against Koufax, we would have won 2-1. Funny how that works. But he was ever the optimist and just a great teammate. But more importantly, he thought outside the box. I remember once in the bullpen, somebody had said to me, Rob, one of your problems is you think and talk about too many things that don't matter. And Boughton looked at him. He said, how do you know? It was such a great compliment from a partner. This guy, I was kind of like Spaceman before Bill Lee was doing it, but there was kind of a method to my madness. And Jim and I had that in common. Like, we got to find a way to do this. It took him 2 years to find a company, but he did it. And we had a 3-year deal with Wrigley, which was hilarious. That it was a 3-year deal. And after year 1, when they sold $18 million worth of gum, we went back and renegotiated. Here we are.
Really?
Well, the company's been in business now 40 years. You're in your 40th anniversary. You only sold 800 million pouches. Hey, this is normally where I turn you over to Ross to ask you a couple of questions and we bounce back and forth. But I got to have Ross. Ross, you want to tell your story about the one time you did chew, or do you want to wait?
Well, see, what's really great is now I didn't chew when I played. I started chewing. I coached 31 years, and I started chewing some then. But I used the big league chew to wrap the Lancaster chewing tobacco, which was fantastic.
Not what it's for.
I know, but it worked great. It was outstanding. But
that's funny.
But how about the actual chew you tried one time?
No,
The story with Earl.
Oh, geez, no, it was dip. I was dipping in Minnesota, and I was charting, and I was going to pitch the next day. So Billy Smith, and he said, I tried Levi Garrett, the dip. And I started, the paper started, the ink started running together. I couldn't see, so I give the chart to Flanagan. And I said, Mike, I got to go upstairs. So the old park in Minnesota, I had held on the rail, going down, went down the steps, went upstairs. And it's about the second inning. It was about the 7th or 8th inning. Here comes Weaver upstairs, and he is jumping up my butt. What the hell are you doing in here? He thought I was sleeping so I could go out and run the streets that night. I go, Earl, come on. I had this for chewing. I did some dip, and I'm sick at my stomach. Thank God I went out and pitched well the next day. But that's the sickest I'd ever been. Why? That's the reason I didn't chew. And then all of a sudden I tried it for a few years and enjoyed it some, but I kicked that habit. But the big league chew was really good. And the different flavors. I don't know how you come about doing that, but that was really outstanding. But can you go over, Rob, a little bit how it started as far as when you first started making it? What did you do? How'd you go about doing it? Because I did read something that you shredded it with a paper shredder, which is
that's not true.
Oh, it's not. That's bull. Okay.
It's funny how that works because the urban myths about big chew. Jim couldn't sell the product. They said, Rob, we need some samples. And I said, Jim, I don't know what I'm going to do. I read an article in People magazine, January of 1979. I may have been the only guy that ever bought a case of the stuff from this company out of Arlington, Texas. Nobody has ever heard of it, but it was an article and you could look it up, as Casey Stengel used to say. It was in Arlington, Texas. I bought a case of this stuff, make your own bubble gum. And I said, that's it. I went to the local Fred Meyer grocery store next to the ballpark and got some maple extract and some root beer flavoring, Hires root beer flavoring. And I went to Todd Field's home in Southeast Portland because a typical ball player, I had no utensils, I had nothing in my apartment. And Mrs. Field, Todd's mom, her name is Candy Field, and she still lives in the same home, just a delightful family. And she said, yeah, you guys can do this. And, you know, the funny thing, it was February 6th, 1979. I found out about 10 years later that happened to be Babe Ruth's birthday. But I made a tray full of it. It looked like a really thin brownie because I thought the brown thing would be cool. The Wrigley people said, you know, you stick to the ideas. We know how to make gum. Kids are not going to buy a brown gum. So it came out, I baked it, and I used a pizza knife, one of those round knives. And that's how I shredded the whole thing. And then I put it in some pouches and sent it off to Jim. And as luck would have it, he had a friend who knew a division of Wrigley called Amaral Confections out of Naperville. And they made some of this stuff. What's fascinating is it's a long loop, but there was a fellow there named Ron Ream, who was an engineer he's the Willy Wonka of the whole thing. He's the guy who figured out how to shred gum, how to make it so it wouldn't stick together. He's also the fellow who created bubble tape for the Wrigley Company. So brilliant guy, still work with him. He heads the My Big League Chew division now for personalized pouches. He's like 78 years old. He's still in the gum business. He's an awesome guy. But it seemed everywhere I went, my brother Harry said only Forrest Gump. Everywhere I went, somebody knew a guy who knew a guy, and the thing worked out. So we go to Amaral. They say, we could do this. They made some samples up, and Jim was going to lunch with A.G. Atwater, the fellow who runs that company. And they went to a local 7-Eleven and said, we're working on a new product. Here are a couple of sleeves, 2 12-packs. They said, put this on the shelf, no charge, see if anybody likes it. So they went to lunch, 2-hour lunch. They come back and the guy doesn't have it on the shelf, on the counter. And Jim says, I thought you said that you were going to do it for us. He says, I did. It was gone in a half hour. People bought the stuff like crazy. Great. And that's when we knew we had lightning in a pouch. I mean, we got lucky. The first year we sold $18 million worth of Big League Chew. The following year, the Cubs were sold for $22 million. Wow. It was like Big League Chew replaced the Cubs in the Wrigley family. It was insane.
Really?
No lefty luckier than I will say that.
That's great.
That's great. It's only 800 million pounds.
Yeah. Now,
actually, we're up to 975.
900. Now, Rob, how's this COVID situation affected the sale of the gum, or has it? It's a really good question, and it has impacted because we sell a lot by the bucket. We have not only the shreds now, we have bubblegum balls. So all the concession stands, all the tuck shops that they have at the youth league fields, there's not as much baseball going on. So the first half of this year was really tough. And now it's really come back. I think there are fall programs, there are clinics and so forth, and people are learning how to survive in COVID times. So I moved 10 years ago when Wrigley was bought out by Mars. I went to Wrigley and I took free agency a year early because I knew this was pending, and I knew I wouldn't be a big fit for a company like Mars Wrigley. I said to the Wrigley people, look, you're going to sell more M&Ms on a Saturday than Big League Chew sells in a year. We're kind of a niche brand. I mean, out here in Portland, it's funny being an Oregon invented company. My kids' friends think I'm like Phil Knight. You know, like Big League Chew is as big as Nike, and we're not. We're a little niche brand, $15 or $20 million a year. I mean, it's a nice chunk. It's a nice little business, but it's not $1 billion business. So I went to this smaller company in Western New York, Ford Gum, over 100 years old, and it was like going back to the future. The Ford Gum guys, George Steggy runs the thing. He's a former school teacher, got a group of guys together and built a business that was moribund. And
When Big League Chew came there, we became instantly 50% of Ford Gum's business. We're 3 hours from Cooperstown, which is one of the reasons we became the Hall of Fame bubblegum. Our relationship with Cooperstown has been awesome. They love the fact that Big League Chew is made in the USA, also made in New York State. A lot of the big companies now are not in the US. There are reasons for that, the cost of sugar and other political things. But we've survived that thing. And I think it's because Ford Gum really got me from the beginning. I said, look, this brand is like WD-40. You know, the WD-40 is made by the WD-40 company. They do one thing really well. And I said, I don't want to get into Big League root beer and Big League sunflower seeds and stuff. My brand is not Big League. My brand is Big League Chew. When people saw the pouch in the beginning, they smiled and they said, damn, this is really fun. And I like that. I like the fact that we've maintained its simplicity. Steve Sachs had said to me on an ESPN radio show, he said, the thing I love about Big League Chew is you guys are basically what it was in the beginning. Changed a little artwork, updated the story and so forth, but you know, we didn't reinvent the wheel. We just brought fun to the ball yard, and I'm obviously grateful for the whole thing. It's insane.
I want to pick up with you because I had you on my radio show, The Bat Around, about 1.5 years ago. You lost a dear friend in Jim Bouton when he passed away July 10th, 2019. I want to go back. He said he could sell it. He put up some of the original seed money, didn't he? With some of
he put all the seed money up.
Okay, so maybe from his World Series winnings or something that he had put away.
I've got the time.
How much did he work with the company once he helped get you off the ground? Did he do much for the first 5 years?
Jim had a great line. Jim had a great line. He said, Rob, you had the inspiration, but I'm the perspiration. And, you know, I would hit the road. I'd go to Sydney. I played ball in Australia. I went to South Africa. I ended up pitching in the British National League in London. As you can tell, I didn't go to places like Cuba or Japan because I'm not that good. I wanted to go to a place where I could keep playing ball. And
you would have been big. You would have been big in Israel, Rob. You would have been great in Israel.
Yeah, except they run the bases clockwise there. I probably would have ended up being a shortstop, you know. But the thing about Jim was that it was a 50-50 partnership, and he just worked his tail off and was as tenacious as can be. He vigorously defended the brand, and he was just an absolute great spokesperson. The one thing that Jim and I really made clear that this was the fun alternative to Redman, to all the other stuff. And in the beginning, people didn't quite get that. I saw the most recent government statistics last month. The consumption of Redman style tobacco since Big League Chew came out in the 80s is down 77%. So I think we had a lot to do with guys. Yeah. They're not dipping, they're not chewing. Right. So what our plan was really worked out. The fact that it's over 3/4 of a drop in the consumption of it. And of course, the big leagues guys don't chew anymore because they know that it's a performance debilitating drug. They have families, they have agents, and say, look, you're going to take 1 or 2 years off your career if you're chewing the other stuff. Chew bubblegum. Corey Seager is my biggest fan in terms of chewing original Big League Chew. These guys are smart. Plus, let's face it, Big League Chew is fun. Yeah, it's my mantra. You know, I wake up at 4 a.m. and I scribble stuff down, and I look in the morning and I say, what does that say? And one of them was, bubblegum's better when it comes from a shredder. It's genius. You know, so
really.
I'm a bit like Mariano Rivera. I had one pitch, and I've taken it, to the Hall of Fame.
There you go.
You know, not me, but my gum is there.
Yeah. Rob Nelson
I'm a grateful guy.
Rob Nelson is our guest. Rob, this is the point where I usually end up talking to you about your career, but I know that you're a passionate lover of the game of baseball. And the minor leagues especially are near and dear to your heart. Tell me what you think is going on, what the commissioner is doing by contracting the aim is supposedly to contract 42 teams. I don't know whether they'll get it all accomplished this year or not, but it seems like he's intent on doing this. Why is he doing it in your eyes, and what is the harm in it?
Well, I think the bottom line is the bottom line. that they said, we've got a lot of kids playing in Batavia that have no chance of playing in the big leagues. So it was a business decision. And I think what the hope is for Major League Baseball is that leagues like the New York Penn League or out here, the Northwest League, where the Mavericks were a part of it, are going to become either independent operations or they're going to become like the West Coast League out here, a summer collegiate league, which is like the Cape Cod League of the West. And I think that's what MLB's intent is, that guys are still going to get a chance, but they're not going to be drafted and they're not going to get a lot of the backing that MLB would give them in terms of spring training and that kind of experience. So it's who knows? It's a crapshoot what they're going to do. There are a lot of minor league cities that built new ballparks for minor league teams. Are the fans going to still come out because baseball is baseball, whether it's a summer college league or the Buster Posies of the future? I really don't know. I know it's heartbreaking for a lot of the towns. It looks like Salem, Oregon, just down the road from us, is going to lose their giant affiliate. And the New York Penn League the West Coast League rather, may end up being 6 teams. And I think the New York Penn League also very similar. It's going to be about half the size.
Well, I know, for example, Trenton is being, they're being destroyed. Trenton Thunder.
Well, and Staten Island as well.
Yeah.
The Staten Island Yankees are going away. So it's a massive crunch. And I just don't know in terms of guys being drafted and getting a chance to play. I hope they still get it. The verdict is still way out there in terms of the cost. My experience going to the Hillsborough Hops games, a Diamondbacks affiliate. Hillsborough is about, maybe 15 miles from downtown Portland. And they do a spectacular job. And they have, I don't know, maybe 10 guys now in the big leagues who played for the Hops. It's a very big deal, the big leaguers started here kind of thing. It happens in the Cape Cod League that there are a ton of guys who've played in the Cape Cod League and then made it to the big leagues. Will the fans notice the difference? I honestly don't know. For me, I'm probably like you guys. Baseball is baseball. If you don't hit the cutoff man quite as well in a summer college league, it is what it is. But in terms of fans going out and participating in the family experience, I hope MLB is right. I know it's hard for the ownership because they're not going to get the funding that they were used to getting for so many years. I mean, 42 is a terrible number to pick. In terms of dropping, because it's a sacred number in the game of baseball. Pick 43 or 40. Why somebody said we're going to drop 42 teams? It's like the kiss of death kind of thing. It's like insulting to the history of the legacy of Jackie Robinson. So to go from 162 teams down to 120, I wish them luck, and I just hope the guys who love the game the way we do are still going to get the chance.
Right.
Ross, go ahead.
Yeah, Rob, how is that going to affect Big League Chew minus 40 plus teams or so? Is that going to affect you that much, or do you get most of your little leagues and amateur ball? Is that where you get most of your?
I don't think it's going to have an impact. I don't think it's going to have an impact at all. As long as baseball is being played, ball players and fans are going to still be true in Big League Chew, because my brand is mostly about fun and baseball. Now, at the big league level, there are guys up there who just they become 11 years old when their box of Big League Chew ends up in their locker. And I love that. I don't know if you've ever read any of the stuff about Corey Seager when he was talking about how he no longer chews grape Big League Chew because it's called ground ball grape. And in a high school tournament, all he was able to do is hit ground balls. So he segued over to original, and he's done that for what? He's had a 10-year career, right? That's all he chews is original Big League Chew. I love stories like that.
Yeah.
How many products are in big league dugouts that guys are not getting paid to endorse, and it's still their gum of choice? It cracks me up. We can't afford to do that. We're a small company, but the guys love it. So in terms of minor leaguers or college players, I would say it's going to have no impact on Ford Gum and on Big League Chew. Our goal is to just make sure there's a lot of baseball out there.
Right. Now, are you? Do you have any the future of Big League Chew? Now, are you looking at different flavors, a different type of Big League Chew, or are you just stick with what you got?
Well, it's like a big league roster. We called up a new flavor for December. I don't know if you read the press releases. We have hot chocolate big league chew.
Oh, hot chocolate big league chew.
It's really fabulous. As a kid, did you ever have a Necco wafer? New England Confection Company.
Sure.
The chocolate Big League Chew reminds me of a Necco wafer. And when they told me they were going to do it, it's not just chocolate Big League Chew. They've got the character wearing a winter hat. It looks like he's playing on the North Pole. It's hilarious how cool it is. We are bringing in new flavors. A couple of years ago, we put a girl on the pouch, and she's got her own flavor now, Slammin' Strawberry. And we're killing with Slammin' Strawberry. Not only because we got a left-handed hitter, girl on the pouch, but it's really good gum. And that's the cool thing about Ford gum. When we have discussions, sometimes I feel like Warren Beatty in the old movie Heaven Can Wait, when he gets to take over a company and he says, why don't we charge less money? Would you pay a penny to save a porpoise? He had all these dopey ideas. So when I talk to the guys at Ford Gum, I'll say, listen, can we put 10% more gum in? I'll take 10% less on the royalty and the kids will get more gum. And they said, well, the machines are geared in such a way that we can work on that. But they look at me like, why would you do that? I said, because when I was 11, I remember when the Tootsie Roll lost one of those segments. And I remember my brother Ed saying that this is not going to work. This will not abide, And I said, kids know that. And I said, I don't want to advertise. I don't want to put 10% more gum in the pouch with a big splash that says now 10% more gum. I want some kid in Massapequa on Long Island, where I grew up, sitting in the dugout, handing a pouch of his gum to his buddy, Billy Lukasik, like I had when I was a kid. And Billy's going to stick his hand and say, there's a ton of gum in here. Seems like there's more gum in here, And the way the world works now, let's say, is there more gum in Big League Chew? Who does that? It's a wacky thing. It's the exact opposite of what companies try to do when there's less stuff in there. I want to put more stuff in. And Ford Gum understands there's a method to my madness. So because we're based on fun and simplicity, it was a big deal. The wackiest thing that we got hot chocolate Big League Chew. They said, what are these guys going to think up next? But you're not going to see Big League Chew sunflower seeds or root beer or things like that. Yeah. It's not what I know. It's not what I do.
If I promise to split it with Ross, can you send me a case of the hot chocolate Big League Chew?
Yeah.
The gum is in the mail. I'll call Buffalo tomorrow morning and say,
all right.
Text me the address again, because I can forward the text more quickly.
I will.
And I'll tell you what, to keep it simple, because I know you're not going to give them the whole half. I want two addresses. You got
all right. No, I'll get Ross's. Address. I'll get Ross. Oh. Hey, Rob, let's talk about, because I do know from Adam Gladstone the story about when about a dozen years ago, 15 years ago, you were with him and Billy Ripken, and you got in the car and you said, got a great idea. Why don't they use an opener in a game, instead of just a closer? So you've had great ideas all along. Tell me about that story, but then I want to talk about how you envision 2021 season unfolding. I want to see if you, me, and Ross are in agreement on it. But tell us about how you came up with the idea.
The opener idea. Who is Billy's buddy? Was it Greg Olson? Was the great reliever for the Orioles?
Yeah.
We had lunch, and I had asked Olson. I said, if a team offered you $1 million to pitch 80 to 100 innings a year, and it was always the first inning of the game, would you take it? And surprisingly, he said, no, I wouldn't do it. I said, why not? He said, well, I wouldn't get a save. I wouldn't get a win. There'd be nothing in it for me statistically. And the ripper was great. Billy said, oh, you kidding? You got spring training. You got your family coming to the ballpark. You're in the big leagues. You're shagging fly balls during batting practice. It made perfect sense to Bill why you would do that. The thing that I was pitching was, I said, look, as a pitcher, I would want that because, number one, I wouldn't have to wait 8 innings to get loose and do all that. I just know I'd go out there, I'd do my job. And then I could go back in the clubhouse. I could get on the treadmill, do whatever my other stuff was. I'd always be ready. But I also like the idea was, as the opener, you're always facing the top of the order. you're always facing the best guys. So I said it'd be a really big challenge. And I said it would mess with the other manager, because if you've got a lefty on as your opener, and then you bring in a burly right-hander, they don't quite know what to do. And as often happens with my ideas, they said that would never fly. And then, Adam was the first guy. He sent me a text. He said, "Have you been talking to Tampa Bay?" I said, "No, why? Do they need a left-hander?" And he said, "No, they're going with the opener." He said, "I thought sure that you worked your way in there." I said, "Absolutely not." I said, "It was only a matter of time." And I'm not a sabermetrician by any means. I mean, I respect the work that those guys do, but I just thought for a team, it would be easier to do. And the other thing one of the reasons I liked it, my idea was the roster, the pitching staff would have 1 inning guys and 4 inning guys. So you would go 1-4-4, and that would be all you would need. And it's kind of happening now. Mine was a bit more specific, but the basic premise was that when you go through the lineup 2 times, the batters are kind of getting onto you a little bit, and you bring in a fresh arm. Oddly enough, I've kind of done a 180 in that I think back of the memories I had, games that I pitched where I went 9 innings and we won the national championship in England and in South Africa. And when I shut out Princeton, the best game I ever pitched in college, there's a feeling about that when you're low, like during COVID times, you kind of go back to the greatest moments you had in your sporting life. And the guys today are being deprived of that. Nobody, there are no more Bob Gibsons out there because nobody will let them be the Bob Gibsons. So the nostalgic part of me, the old school part of me says, I hope some club comes along and says, we're going to flip the script a little bit here. And Bill has said that. Bill Ripken has said that in his most recent book. He talks about there's a place for sabermetrics, but also the fact that there are some guys you want to give Messina the ball. He's going out in the 9th inning and he's running out of gas, but he'll find a way to get people out.
Or you at least want to let Blake Snell throw more than 72 pitches in a ball game.
Imagine you come out, Walter Austin comes out and says to Koufax, "That's it, Sandy, you're good."
That's it.
Yeah.
They got a single off the end. Right.
Yeah, I tell you,
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No,
Go ahead, Ross.
You watch, who's won the World Series the last several years, team with the best starting pitching. The starting pitching has been, I guess, when the analytics started, sabermetrics, the starting pitcher has been kind of shoved to the side and not being taught how to pitch. And it's a full bore thing. You're throwing 99 at the start of the game and you're throwing 99 at the end of the game. There's no throttling back. That has caused a number of injuries. There are more injuries this year than ever before. And there's several
good
reasons.
Point.
Yeah, there's several reasons because of the stoppage of spring training, because you're always building arm strength up in spring training. And at the beginning of the season, they stopped it. They brought it up 3 months later. With 3 weeks of spring training, you had to start over again. Spring training is mainly for the pitchers, and that's what's happened. But I think starting pitching has been just thrown to the wayside. But you look at who's won the World Series the last several years. Starting pitching. That's something I think, and Billy's book is outstanding. That is a great book, and it kind of tells you. You got to blend. If you could blend the two things, baseball and analytics, if you could blend it together and not totally throw baseball people out of the game like it's happening now, if you could blend them together, you're going to have something working.
Rob,
I think the one thing the old school thing does is it brings fun to it.
Yes.
And I can understand some of the stuff, but when I look at the clip of Bartolo Colon hitting a home run, all right, that's once every blue moon, but it was so much fun. So that's gone because you got the DH in both leagues. As a business person, I can understand why they want to do that. But in terms of the character of the game, to have Madison Baumgartner come in and he's supposed to throw an inning and he finishes the game and they win the World Series, it's an epic win. I mean, it's a part of the lore of the game. And there just isn't that much anymore. You think about Warren Spahn and Juan Marichal throwing 15 innings each.
Oh, yeah.
1 July. And people talk about it today. One book was written about one game because two guys went the route. And Marcia wouldn't come out of the game because Alvin Dark said, you're good. And he says, the guy across and the other guy's 41 years old. I'm not leaving.
Right.
I love stories like that. You know,
Hey,
I think it's great.
let me tell you about Bumgarner. When that happened, he started warming up in the bullpen. No one told him to. He just started warming up.
I didn't know that.
No, he started warming up. Nobody told him. He come in the game. He goes, I ain't coming out. So that was, yeah. He just started throwing. Everybody in the bullpen's kind of looking at him like, "What are you doing?" He said, "I'm going in the game."
Hey, Rob, before we duck out of here, because time flies, tell me how you see the 2021 season being played at the major league level, and I'll go a step further. Do you see minor league baseball being able to put on a season? I mean, the pandemic numbers right now are getting scarier than they were back last March and April.
I think we're going to see a season of 100, maybe 120 games.
Yeah.
I don't think we're going to see Major League Baseball till the 4th of July. And that's if everything falls into place. You know, there's a lot of discussion about a vaccine, but all that stuff is going to take its time. I think baseball is going to be prudent about the thing, and it's frustrating. And in terms of the minors, I'm thinking also July you're going to see baseball. So I think you're going to see it, but I don't think it's going to be nearly 162 games. I will say this. The playoffs, I didn't like having a whole bunch of teams in there. I get it for this year. Unfortunately, I think you still might have a one.
I think you will. 8. Yeah, I think you will.
And if they do one plays 8, I think they need to tweak it a bit like the NBA did, where the Trailblazers had to lose 2 games to be out of the playoffs. So if you're playing one plays 8, I'd give the number 1 seed. If it's a 5-game series, I'd give the number 8 team the home game for game 1, and then they're on the road for the next 4 games. You've got to respect the regular season. It's not the NBA, it's Major League Baseball. If they end up doing that, the best way to take care of that is to make sure the teams with higher seeds who had better seasons really get rewarded for that. So I do.
It's tougher. It's tougher. It's tougher to reward though when there won't be a real home game though, because I think they will play in a bubble again.
Well, you know, that's a really good point. And I don't know what the answer is. It would have been terrible to me had the Astros made it to the World Series. To have a sub-500 team in the Fall Classic just is wrong. So the cosmic tumble is clicked in the right place for baseball. I'm hoping they get 120 games in. I think it's going to be more like 100 games.
I think it's going to be 100 to 110 games. I don't think there'll be a real spring training in terms of Florida and Arizona. I think the teams will report about April 1st, April 10th to start a spring training of 5-6 weeks in the hometown, and then the season will commence. And I think we'll have the same thing again geographically, East Coast, East Coast, Midwest, West Coast, where they can travel to a minimum. Ross, you agree with that?
Yeah, no, I mean, it all depends on what happens with this COVID thing. I mean, it looks like it could be very similar. Hopefully they don't get crazy and try to do too much too quick and just set things back. But I think that's probably a safe bet doing that, but who knows?
Rob, I've got one last question for you because you are a thinker, and is in some way you can see that MLB and the MLBPA are heading like 2 freight trains heading toward one another. Is there a chance that this whole pandemic and what it's going to force them to do is going to get both sides to realize how much they need the other side and to look at the other side? Because that's what I think needs to happen, because you've got 2 sides, just like in the body politic, you've got 2 sides in MLB now that are talking different languages.
I absolutely agree that the locking horns thing doesn't help anybody. The one commonality between the owners and the players is I think both sides agree the most important part of baseball is the fans.
Yeah.
And you've got to look out for the fans. And if both sides can start from there and say, look, we want to make the game good for the fans. How do we do that? You want to take care of players, and there are instances where you've got inequalities, injustice. The Chris Bryant thing it leaves a bad taste in your mouth that they didn't treat a superstar the way I think they should have. But I do think everybody's got to step back a little bit. We're certainly not living in the age of compromise, but I do think you're absolutely right. Both sides have to take a step back. And I think for the sake of the fans and for the integrity of the game, you got to take a long look at this thing.
Yeah, I think what's going to happen is they're going to look at necessity is going to force them to come to terms with a reality that both sides can live with, because the players are going to take another huge shave this year. There's no question about it. But owners are taking, I think what's become pretty apparent is that ownership takes a big shave. Even though they're rich people, it's not like their baseball teams have just endless gobs of cash laying around to use. You know, you need the asset of what the fans bring to make it all work. It's the engine.
No question. I do think there's enough money to go around that guys are going to realize that we're going to deal with this for at least another year, and then we can resume things. So maybe they'll have some kind of provisional agreement until they get through this whole thing, and then they can go back in and knocking each other's block off. But for now, they've got to look for the good of the game and the good of the fans. All
right. Well said. Rob Nelson's been our guest. 40-year anniversary of Big League Chew. He started it with Jim Bouton in 79, 80, in that period of time. Only sold 800 million pouches. I'll text you mine and Ross's address.
Yeah.
I'm dying to try hot chocolate gum. Love you, Rob.
You guys have been great.
Thanks, buddy. Thank you so much.
For Ross Grimsley and Rob Nelson, the owner of Big League Chew, I'm Stan the Fan. I'll see you Wednesday night when Gary Stein and I will have Don Marcus, former writer for the Baltimore Sun. We'll be talking all things Terps on Wednesday night as Jalen Smith is going to be drafted. All right. Thank you. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.